Thank you, and great to be here. I'm not actually from the waste industry. This is my first waste conference, and my colleagues at GHD tell me they are a lot of fun, including the fancy dress evening, so I hope that went well last night. So before I get into it, I just want to introduce myself. So Ian Dixon, Technical Director and also GHD's APAC Sustainability Service Line Lead. Sorry, how do I move down the text? There's some more text I need to see on the screen. That's fine. My role at GHD is primarily involved in the design of new assets for clients, mainly buildings, precincts and infrastructure projects. And for those that don't know GHD, we're a professional services firm. We've been around now for nearly 100 years, originally started in Australia, but we're now a global company with over 11,000 staff in 160 offices across 5 continents, and we have a very strong regional presence in Australia, which we're quite proud of, including an office in Coffs Harbour. And today I'm here to talk to you about some work we've just completed with the Green Building Council. And that piece of work is called the Sustainable Procurement Guide for new buildings and major refurbishments. And just to give you some background about the guide, we've been working on this with the GBCA for approximately 2 years. It's been co-funded by New South Wales, Queensland and South Australia government, and also the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. The built environment sector, historically, there's been a big explosion in guidance on how to design circular buildings, but there's been very little information about what you actually need to do to procure your teams and the products and things that go into a circular building. And this is what this guide effectively aims to do, is bridge that gap in industry knowledge. So why is this important? As you're probably well aware, the built environment is a huge contributor to land use change, resource consumption, and climate change. So nearly 50% of global resources are currently consumed by new construction. And the sector is also responsible for close to 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions. The circular economy, the principles of circular economy have the ability to tackle all of these challenges simultaneously, and it does that by eliminating waste from the sector, keeping materials in use for as long as possible at their highest value. So the guide itself is structured around the life cycle stages of a building. So for each stage, you'll get clear guidance on what to do. And within the guide, we do include some circular economy fundamentals. And the reason for that is it's to enable someone who doesn't know anything about the circular economy to pick up this guide and get at least a base knowledge before they go through and understand how to procure a circular building. So the other important parts of the guide to make note of is we do also include a summary of the key circular strategies that can be employed in a building, both for design and construction. And then we've got sample procurement clauses that developers and teams can include in project briefs, documentation, and more importantly, in contract documentation. The guide also has case studies of current best practice with some example buildings in Australia that right now are adopting circular outcomes in their design and construction. And we've also got a series of appendices that contain additional information and links to a number of external resources. So one of the fundamental sections just does give an overview of circular building strategies. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but as a professional involved in that upfront design of things, what we're trying to do with our clients is actually design buildings in a way that either use less resources, or more importantly, where you do need to deploy resources for a building, is put them into a building in a way that they can be easily disassembled and recovered at the end of that building use. One of the key challenges in the construction sector now is that most buildings are not built to be taken apart readily. They have to be demolished mechanically, which makes recovering those materials and keeping them in a higher value use is challenging, and often things end up getting downcycled in most situations. One of the challenges of circular economy in general and in buildings is the sheer number of stakeholders who have a role to play in order to achieve a circular outcome. So, this starts with the developers and people that are procuring the building, which could include, obviously, local councils. We know you build a lot of your own assets. And it also includes professional services firms, and it also includes, obviously, demolition and waste handling companies who take materials out at the end of life. I just wanted to highlight, in particular, the role for councils. So when it comes to new development, I think councils have a really strong role to play, and we're starting to see some of this happen already in industry. But one key thing councils could do more of is incentivise developers to adopt circular practices, and that could be through things like giving them additional floor area or relaxing other planning controls in return for circularity outcomes. And then another key one will be increasing planning controls over time to encourage more developers who are perhaps not as motivated as some to do the right thing. But one thing councils can do through things like development control plans is include circularity requirements within those. For the waste industry, as I mentioned, we know you already work pretty hard to take materials out of buildings and recover and reuse them where possible. But what we're hoping is, as the construction sector starts to do more disassembly, that over time you'll evolve your business operations to be able to take more materials out and put them back into the market at a higher value use. The next couple of slides are just some extracts from the guide. So, as I mentioned earlier, the guide itself is structured around the different life cycle stages of a building. So that starts with the planning stage. You've then got the design stage, construction, operation, and then end of life and disposal. This is an example from the planning stage. And what we do here is we include details on who the key stakeholders are, what the key strategies are that you can employ at this stage. And then the really important bit is the core tasks. So these tasks essentially outline what the team need to do who are involved in the planning stage of a new building. And then the final bit is the stage deliverable. So these are all the things that need to be documented and then transferred to the team that then pick up the next stage of the project. There's a couple of call-out boxes on here that you can see as well. So each stage has its own page with this information. And what these call-out boxes do is just draw the reader to additional references or important points, such as recognising that First Nations people inherently adopt circular practices within their way of life. This one is the procurement clauses. So again, this extract is for the planning stage. Typically what we have is examples of what you include in a project brief. For example, if you've got an existing building that you could potentially reuse, one of the key things to do is actually do an audit of the assets that you own and actually look to see if you can repurpose any of those rather than build new buildings. Mentioned earlier, we've got some case studies in here. So these are three examples. These were developed in collaboration with the government partners, and they were selected because they had adopted one or more circular strategies. So the first one is United on 2nd in Adelaide. The strategies adopted for this building were designing it for future disassembly, so the materials could be easily recovered, and this is something that we call using buildings as a material bank within the industry. The second one is Midtown Centre in Brisbane. This was an adaptive reuse of an existing building, so minimised the use of resources. And then the final one is Bradfield City Centre, which is a new city that's been developed in Western Sydney, near to Western Sydney Airport. This is a New South Wales government building who spent a lot of time designing this building to be flexible and modular so they can change its function over time without having to do too much disruptive demolition and remodification works. It also uses design for disassembly, so all the structure is timber with bolted connections and can be removed and taken apart at end of life. So a few closing remarks. The circular economy transition provides, in my view, a fantastic opportunity to solve the joint challenges of climate change, biodiversity loss, and waste caused by the building sector. Solving this challenge will require collective action, including from many of you in the room, if we're going to make this a reality. And the guide hopefully fills a bit of a gap in industry knowledge and helps people actually get on with that transition in the building sector. If you're interested, you can download a copy using that QR code. Thanks for your time, everyone.